Hello and welcome everyone.
Hi everyone.
This is OzByDrone and we've got someone who is doing really crazy stuff in the background. Can you do that again and we'll put you up?
Yeah, what is that, Lloyd? What are you doing?
It's going to take us a moment to put Lloyd. Put him in there, yeah.
He was saving it, I think, just for that moment we're about to go on air. Oh, there you go.
We're about to go on air and he's going and replacing the shot with that on the screen and yeah. Anyway, let's get back to the studio. I'm Greg and he's John and we're here and this is OzByDrone.
Welcome. Great to have you with us this week, everybody. Great show for you this week. Great guest. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so this week our guest is Doc Murdoch. He's an FPV dude with a lot of aviation background, a lot of experience, and we're going to have some fun talking to him. John and Doc, they're going to be nattering forever. Lloyd might even fall asleep again. Well, it's not hard for that to happen. Other than that, we've also got coming up next week as a global fly-in. So we want everyone who's able to do the fly-in to do that again next week. At the end of the show today, if you want to have a practice, sending a video feed so that we can work out if it gets into the studio or not. End of the show today, join in Discord and we can have a quick practice today. During the show today, we've also got lots of news and lots of really interesting stuff. Let's start right now and get into that with the news. And as always, our news is brought to you by AirData UAV. Is your drone healthy or is it about to surprise you on your next flight? Don't wait to find out. Discover information under the hood and review the early signs of problems before you take off again. There's a discount code you can use, OzByDrone20, and you'll get a 20% discount. But if you don't want to buy it and you just want to try it, no problem. There's a free version available as well. Let's move on to our first story of the day. Now, this one is titled Drone in Love. Drones are a new technology in our lives that is feared by some. Researchers at Ben Gurion University have set out to change that perception, where they have showed for the first time that humans can be made to emotionally recognize and empathize with drones. Now, this is a little bit of a long video, but that's okay. Let's just watch.
I'm worried right away.
So they've gone and got all of these different smiley faces to put on drones. And if you can imagine, there's an LCD display they've got on the drone. And they did research to go and find out if people could understand the emotion that the drone was trying to have.
You really picked this for our first story?
Look, there's a little bit of cynicism in it, but let me ask you this. The negative perception of drones, it's real. People are afraid of drones. How do you actually change that? And do we actually go and put a sticker of a smiley face on the front of our drone? John?
Look.
Do you think it'll work?
No. In a word, I don't really think it'll work. I think it's it's like an advertising company idea. I think the way, and if you can kill that music, because that just really doesn't sell it at all. But I absolutely think that the way that our machines are going to be accepted is when they start saving more lives. When they're delivering these medical supplies, when they're doing work. I mean, people don't even really want pictures delivered necessarily. They want to see this technology saving lives, doing good things, and that's going to do it. I mean, this is obviously expensive and, anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. I just think, a love relationship with a drone and a smiley face is really pushing it. I gotta say. I mean, and the drone's not making any noise here. It's floating into the person. Where's the one that's tearing past it at 60 knots? Let's love that.
By the same token, let me ask you the other side, right? If a sticker, not a digital screen, if a sticker on the front
Yeah.
is going to give it a human persona for the cost of 50 cents or whatever it is you said a moment ago. Why wouldn't you chuck a sticker on, and is it going to help? I don't know.
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put a smiley face on my drone. Is that that's all it is? I really don't think it's going to work. The smiley face has to go on the pilot, and the pilot has to talk to the person that doesn't love the drone and smile and tell them what you're doing and everything. The drone says nothing with a smiley face on it. Anyway, I as I said, I think it's madness.
Okay, so there's one. Let's get Lloyd. What do you think? Would you put a smiley face on your drone?
Are you kidding me?
He doesn't know what a smiley face looks like.
Really? No.
You're talking to a grumpy guy. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. You see the name? Grumpy.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you put a grumpy face on your drone then, maybe?
I could put something on my drone, but it'd be inappropriate to say what it is on this show.
There you go. That's what we're talking about.
We're going to move from that into our second story of the day, hurricane hunting. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Organization, try saying that a few times fast, they are testing hurricane hunting drones. Let's have a look.
Most people, as they should, run or hide from hurricanes. But some men and women don't run. They fly into them.
I just remember getting off the plane and my hands were sore from hanging onto the yoke so hard.
And they do it thousands of feet in the air because it's personal. Others study these tropical tempests. But for decades, it's been difficult to get a good picture of what's happening low. Not within, but below the clouds of a hurricane. Until now, scientists, pilots, and their crews have a new partner. Drones that soar where hurricane hunters literally can't.
There's no margin for error for a manned aircraft down there.
Once launched from the belly of a P-3 aircraft, these unmanned aerial aircraft can fly up to 4 hours, collecting data on the atmosphere and the water directly underneath.
And we also have a downward-looking infrared sensor that can give us the ocean, so the sea surface temperature.
So there's a lot more to that story that we didn't include. This was just a quick little highlight grab, but a good use for unmanned aerial vehicles.
Absolutely. You know what I noticed, though? I noticed there wasn't a smiley face on that thing. Did you notice that? There wasn't one. Yeah, good tech. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Looks like it wouldn't be a very low-speed aircraft. Like when you see those torpedo kind of machines, very low wing area, so they need to move pretty fast. But if you know your aeronautics, a high wing loading, if you like, is much better in turbulence. So if you're moving quickly, you've got a small wing, you're actually able to manage high turbulence much better. So purpose-built aircraft for sure.
Yeah, they were talking about it getting down to 200-300 feet and so on. So they're deliberately trying to get to lower altitudes to find out what is actually going to be impacting people on the ground. That's the kind of next level of their research that they wanted to do.
For sure. Well, this thing would have to have a high speed range as well, because you're fighting very, very strong winds. I mean, if you haven't got the capability to fly fast, you're going to get swept wherever the wind's going to take you, of course, as well. So, yeah, good gadget.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go on to another good gadget. And we spoke last week about the Raspberry Pi drone we had a guest on, and this is another one. PiWings is a Raspberry Pi Pico-powered quadcopter project developed by maker Ravi Bhutani. It involves a custom PCB, Raspberry Pi Pico, which is a small version of the Raspberry Pi, and an original Android-based app for controls. The firmware for this project was made from scratch by Bhutani with simplicity in mind. He wants the project to be accessible to kids who may not have as much programming experience, making it an ideal project for young makers and classroom environments. We've actually reached out to him to see if he wants to come on in a few weeks to talk about this, but it's the fact that we've got this with firmware being built from scratch, I thought was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it is.
So
Yeah, one of the good things about that, when you're working with a small quad and you can see the mobile phone there clearly, a lot of the expense and cost in these kids projects is the remote controller, the Wi-Fi system video. If you're holding a phone that's got all of that tech in it already and you can use Wi-Fi to interface with whatever you're building, you've covered more than half the cost of the vehicle just by the phone that you're holding. And technology you might already have. So, there's a lot of smarts in using phones for this kind of job. And, of course, they easily can run applications that can do the programming as well. That looks good.
Absolutely. And extend that a little bit further and put a Bluetooth controller on it.
Yep.
On your phone.
The weight, yeah, if he's under 250 grams, that sort of solves a lot of other problems as well in terms of registration. So, yeah, good stuff. I didn't know about the mini Raspberry Pi, Greg, the Pico. What is it? I'm not familiar with that.
It's just a smaller board form factor.
Same power, same.
Not the same power as the Pi 4, but still a quite a powerful small form factor microcomputer.
It's still running 3 volts.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That's good. There
Speaking of which, I'm about to go and get a Pi 4 Series B for some stuff at home. I'm looking at that at the moment, but they're out of stock.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, a really good one.
Yeah, good story.
Yeah. So we'll hopefully get him in a few weeks' time. It'll be really good to talk to him. So next one on the list we've got today is, we've been looking at Skydio for the last few weeks, and they've been putting out teasers. Well, the teaser's over. Skydio had their launch event recently, and let's go and have a look at what happened.
Welcome to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm Adam Bree, CEO of Skydio, and we're here today to launch 3D Scan. 3D Scan is a breakthrough autonomy software product that makes it possible to capture everything from bridges to accident scenes with incredible precision. 3D Scan makes it easy to fly inspection and mapping missions that would be impossible with any other drone. Now, you may be wondering why we're hanging out under a giant rocket to talk about 3D Scan. Well, there's a few reasons. 1, rockets are awesome, and at Skydio, we love stuff that flies. 2, we needed some complex 3D structures to show off what 3D Scan is capable of.
So this is a little bit longer video than we'd normally have on our news, but this is actually edited down. But just watch this. This is cool.
3D Scan is designed for maximum adaptability and ease of use. The user only has to complete a few simple steps, and the drone will do the rest. The first thing we have to do is get it in the air. Now that the drone is up in the air, the first thing I need to do is set the floor. You can think of the floor as the lowest part of your volume that the drone is going to scan. The next thing I'm going to do is set the ceiling. You can think of the ceiling as the highest part of the volume, or the top, that the drone is going to scan. Both of these are represented in augmented reality as green and orange planes in the scene. Lastly, I'll set the pillars, or the sides of the volume. Once that's done, I'll set the drone into exploration phase. While it's exploring, the drone will use its real-time computing to draw a 3D model of the scene so it can later plan its photogrammetric mission. I'm simply telling Skydio what I want to scan, and the autonomy engine is doing the rest.
So just as that continues to play,
Now that we've finished the
pretty cool doing an initial, not a full scan, but a 3D model of it, a very basic frame model,
or ground sample distance,
and then it to go and explore that in more detail and fill in that frame.
in real life.
Yeah, that's complex.
Next is overlap.
And interestingly,
Think about that as the percentage of
Skydio
space that goes
jumping
overlapping
into a whole new area there with that kind of modeling, I think, working around structures. It's really good. I mean, obviously the aircraft's got the capability to crawl around things and not fly into it. I imagine flying into rocket engines wouldn't be good for them.
Yeah,
or the
absolutely.
drone. But you know, that's really clever tech.
And this is a second video. This is a capture that they've done of another structure, and we get to see, this is first of all exploring that structure, but we get to see in a short while the actual flight mission of when it was capturing that.
One of the interesting things about capturing structures like that is, and you can see the sun there, is the light. So when you get into shadowed areas and you're working with photogrammetry and stitching together, the variation in the light creates all sorts of issues on problems, can create problems with the stitch. So I'm wondering how they light darker areas to capture those. Because you could do that, you could set up lights to do it inside. But sunlight's very harsh in terms of creating shadows.
Yeah, absolutely. But really cool. Let's leave that story there. Skydio, something to keep watching. It is not a cheap solution. Obviously, you've got the aircraft, which is not the big cost. There is an annual cost that is fairly large, but for the type of output that you can produce with that, definitely worth it for people in that industry.
Just as a quick follow-up, Greg, what do you think DJI, who are a competitor here, are thinking with their Mavic 3? Are they trying to sort that? Are they going to compete with what Skydio's doing, do you think?
In terms of 3D capture or in terms of autonomy and obstacle avoidance?
All of that, I think. I think they're all sort of matched together. Really, you can't have that kind of 3D capture without the autonomy and flying ability. So, you know, it's been a hold-off talking about this other aircraft for a while. That's a brand new development for Skydio, and you wonder how DJI might be thinking about that product or whether they're going to bother. You know, whether that's a very pro use of the aircraft.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the obstacle avoidance, the technology that they've got was developed and built on the ability to have a 3D model inside the aircraft of the things that it's sensing in real time. It needs to know where are things. So they've got to enhance their existing sensing and compute power to go and have those models inside the aircraft. They would be stupid to be not looking at that right now. I'd say it's a 100% certainty that they're doing that. The other piece of building the 3D models from that, I'm going to make a prediction that they're not going to play in that space, just as you've got Pix4D. They're going to leave other software vendors to play with that. That's just my prediction. We might have a chat to our guest a little bit later and see what his opinion is as well, but I just don't see that as DJI's core game.
On a larger scale, though, that M300 being able to do that on large bridges and bigger structures with that big aircraft would be a remarkable. I think it probably would be slated for more of that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at one more story and then we'll bring in our guest and we might add this to the list of things that we're going to talk about. Our next story is this one, and it's already been on Ken's show, and I'm just going to preface the video by saying that the video that we're looking at is a composite of two videos from the same source. So it's the same company, the same brand name on there, but I've superimposed it deliberately because, you know, we've seen this new stuff. Anyway, let me read the intro to the story. Drone experts have long dreaded this moment. The world's first recorded case of an autonomous drone attacking humans took place in March 2020, according to United Nations security report detailing the ongoing second Libyan civil war. Libyan forces used a Turkish-made drone to hunt down and jam retreating enemy forces, preventing them from using their own drones.
And logistics companies have explored ways to use the devices for benign purposes, like dropping a pack of diapers on your front steps. But a new report from New Scientist casts a dark light on some of the more nefarious ways drones can be used as autonomous agents of war. And in this case, the results were downright terrifying. New Scientist says that there is evidence a weaponized drone went on a rogue mission last year where it hunted a human target without being instructed to do so. The publication cites a UN report and says the details suggest a Cargo 2 quadcopter was being used in fully autonomous mode during a conflict in Libya in March of last year when the device pursued a soldier that was trying to retreat.
So interesting that we've got this Audible thing talking about something where it didn't have any real vision. It was all just faked up, mocked up stuff. And then we've got secondary vision of a company that's gone and built a solution that's a weaponized drone that uses AI to go and say, hey, what's the area, the airspace that you want me to go to? And then it decides, it actually makes the decision of when to fire and detonate and cause the damage to the people there. Scary.
It is. If you dig deeper into what's going on here, really, most civilized countries have very strict laws around weaponized autonomous weapons, if you like, of course, weapons that are autonomous. And I believe there's a movement of robotics engineers, you know, the old gangsters, if you like, of the robotics industry are currently working on a very large gathering, a petition, a movement to create very strict laws around autonomous weapons, that their technology will be used in these very nefarious ways. So there is that. I'm not surprised, you know, in those countries where it's being developed and used. But to give you an idea, in Australia, we're looking at 10 years before our Air Force will get a certified Air Force aircraft that are allowed to be weaponized. They'll have reconnaissance and so forth, but we're a long way from having that in terms of certification here, any type of autonomous level. I don't know where the States is at yet, but, you know, our guest may be able to enlighten us. Or Lloyd, do you know where that is at the moment? Yeah, there we go. Super chat. I heard
Super
it.
chat. Yeah. Thanks, Wayne. Can we just go back to the previous super chat? Thanks for that, Wayne. Not the previous super chat, the previous regular chat. It was from Trevor, I think. Lloyd, can you put that back up?
Yeah.
What happens if it returns to home? Yeah, okay. Hopefully it's got enough smarts in it to say, here's where I'm going for. But I get what you're saying, John. There's so much, you know, the whole Skynet and Terminator and all of that kind of stuff out there.
There's a heap. Yeah. There's a lot to go first. You know, we're going to be seeing robotic and autonomous technology come in all sorts of different ways, as I said, probably, hopefully, saving more lives than taking them. And that's the point here. You know, that this technology has great application. So what do? Do you clamp down on the technology and say, no, let's not do that? Or do you develop the good stuff, knowing full well that as history repeats itself, we end up using it for those purposes as well? So
the only thing I'd say is I can guarantee, despite whatever we do with our laws and America and a lot of the other countries that would be seen as friendly countries, not everyone's going to play by the same rules.
No, absolutely not. That is a certainty. They're not going to play by those rules. So, what can you can't do much about that. And it doesn't play well for the people feeling good about our aircraft and what they can do. It certainly plays into the role and the story about why I don't like drones. You know, this is what they can be used for. So we got that to deal with as well.
So if we combine the first story with that one and we put a smiley face on it, we can call the smiling assassin.
Yeah, we can put a smiley face on it. That'll change everything, won't it? Putting the smiling face on. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah. Let's move on, and we're going to go and talk to DocmurdocFPV. That boo wasn't mine. That was Lloyd in the background.
Yeah, that's always Lloyd. He always hits the wrong button, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, he's always pressing buttons. He's a religious guy. He's a Presbyterian, so let's move on from that.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
So, DocmurdocFPV, I've seen you on lots of streams talking about all sorts of stuff for a long time. But the first time on here, so give a quick little intro to yourself and your background for our viewers to start off with.
All right, real quick, been flying RC since 1976. Flown everything, fixed wing, rotary wing, anything I could get my hands on or build. Flew what we call FPV now for the first time in 1985 with a black and white camera that a gentleman by the name of Alan Cocconi built. And it had an early autopilot in it as well. And where if you got it in any kind of weird situation, you just let go of it and it would right itself. It was pretty impressive for the time. And then fast forward to today, you know, I'm a Part 61 pilot, amateur extra class ham operator, and build and fly all these kind of crazy things, you know, and just have a blast.
Okay. And you get to talking a lot about regulatory kind of stuff on different channels,
yes,
and also a lot of the remote ID stuff. I mean, I've got a bit of an interest in remote ID.
Yes, I've got
where do you see that
interest
heading?
in it. Well, where do we see it heading? Boy, that's a tough one, because it really depends on a lot of things that are happening that are in flux right now. I mean, you look at the Race Day Quads lawsuit, you know, on remote ID out here. That is a legitimate federal lawsuit. And best case scenario, they fix everything. Worst case scenario, they make it worse. And that's pretty much the truth to it. I do see them coming out on more top than bottom with it, because when you go back and look at the regulations that the FAA was to follow just to create this regulation, they didn't even follow their own rules. So Race Day Quads has a leg to stand on for this lawsuit, just in that alone. So we'll see how that all plays out here in the future.
Okay. Let's be a pragmatist, though. Let's be a pragmatist. If you could fix some of the objections, do you think there is a need for a remote ID type system in broad terms?
No, not for the type of craft we fly. I think they had the right idea with the Lance system. I think that worked just perfect, because not everybody flies all the time. And when they do go fly, they were going out and saying, okay, this is where I want to fly. So they get on Lance. They tell Lance, this is where I want to fly. This is how high I want to fly. This is the area. And Lance would look at the chart and say, okay, you're good to this altitude, this distance, you're good to go. And the FAA knew where everybody was that was flying when you're using Lance. So there was no reason to create an entirely new piece of regulation to regulate this when they already had it. And that's what a lot of people are pretty much miffed about. You know, they've overly complicated it now. Essentially, they're going to create the haves and the have-nots in the end.
Okay. Let me ask this. Manned aircraft have got ADS-B. Is there a case, in your opinion, for a version of remote ID to exist which will allow you to do something more than if you didn't have that? For example, if you're talking FPV flight, let's say anything below, and I'm not going to, you know, let's say 100, 150 feet or whatever, absolutely zero remote ID required. But if you get above some sort of height that's still within the range that we're allowed to fly today, do you think there should be a tamed version of remote ID which addresses the privacy and security concerns?
Well, like we had discussed earlier, I think if they would have come out with this in such a way that if you were operating commercially under Part 107, then you need to give out more information, okay, through remote ID. But if you're not flying commercially, I don't see a need to do anything more than, at most, broadcast your registration number. And that's it. I just don't see a need for it. They've touted this as a safety and security issue. And that is the part that they failed when they wrote this regulation to start with. They did not do their due diligence even on that. So it begs the question, why did they do it? Yeah. And it comes down to outside forces.
Okay. My last little quick bit on this, and this has been a long-standing thing of mine, is my view is the biggest concern is the ability to spoof data. Is that something that should be in the proposal, something that provides an encryption or digital signature or something on the messages going out? Or do you think we should follow the existing ADS-B style, anyone can say anything?
No, I think all of the private information should stay private and should only be accessible by appropriate law enforcement agencies. That's no different than a vehicle license plate. Anybody
let's pretend it's only the license plate that's going out.
Right.
The problem is I can say my license plate is the same as yours and I can broadcast
That's
that.
right.
And we know that people have hacked drones.
Yep.
That's been going on for a long time. And it's, you know, there's nothing in the standard right now that prevents that.
No. And say you buy one of these modules to retrofit something, you have to be able to program it with your information. So if you can program it, somebody else can hack it. And that's the honest truth. I don't know if something as simple as what they're proposing can even be made secure enough to not be hackable in that way.
Yeah. Okay. Look, it's been interesting chatting to you about the remote ID kind of side of things, but we're going to go on and move on. I'm going to get John to come in and have a chat to you now, because certainly he's been an FPV and manned aviation dude for a long time. Open slather, have a chat.
Well, you know, the first thing I got to ask is, and Doc, you held up something you build. You've been obviously building RC.
Wake up, Lloyd.
Wake up, Lloyd. Wake up.
Yeah.
It's only me.
Come on, Lloyd. You're going to be interested.
You're going to love this. And so I understand you're building your own bush plane.
Yes,
a four-seater. And so for those of us who have a great fantasy, a romantic idea of one day building our own aeroplane, what is it that starts this madness? I mean, is there a cure for it? Because building a quad is a lot different to building a four-seater bush plane. And, you know, I mean, they say most people who start building an aircraft never finish it as well. Now, I've got
that is a true statement.
Well, I have got plenty of quads I haven't finished. I got parts all over the place. So I don't think I'd ever finish a four-seater bush plane. But was there a moment where you thought, well, you know, I've built enough model airplanes, it's just a big one of those, isn't it? What was you thinking there?
Actually, I have been interested in aviation since I was very young. And my father bought me a Cox U-Control airplane that we flew on strings for years. And then we just progressed from there, and, you know, it just progresses into bigger and bigger and bigger things. And eventually, you know, I knew I wanted to get my pilot's license, and then early on, family got in the way, and then I had to wait, and then finally got my license. And then, you know, the ultimate goal was to have my own airplane on my own property on an airstrip. Well, I've got the property on the airstrip. I'm prepping to build the the hangar and the home there now. And in the meantime, I've been working little by little on the airplane, you know, because I've had to retire and move and, you know, a few times. So that always gets in the way. But yeah, that's the ultimate goal, was to be able to live, fly, and enjoy aviation as a whole, not just flying manned aviation, but just aviation as a whole, from my own home, from the airstrip, and be in that. That has just fascinated me forever.
So going back to our last story a bit, which will be interesting too, once you've finished your bush plane and you're flying from your own property, having your own fun, you'll have a requirement to have ADS-B fitted to commingle with other aircraft, correct?
Yes and no. Okay. The no comes that the ADS-B is only required when you go into certain airspaces. Because of where I live and the majority of the places I fly, legally, I am not required to have it because I fly mostly in Class G airspace.
Yep.
So it's not required.
This is the point where that comes back to commingling. Only a lot of this registration and remote ID and things is really applicable where aircraft and unmanned aircraft, manned and unmanned aircraft, are going to commingle. Where the airspace, you need to separate them. But in normal circumstances where separation is not required, I totally agree with you. I think there should be a freedom of navigation.
Absolutely.
That you're allowed to do and use your own good common sense with where you're flying.
Yep.
And I think the UTM, people designing UTM are driving that point. What they'll realise eventually is, like manned aircraft, it's way too difficult to use the resources, unnecessary resources, to look over your operation in your bush plane over your own property, flying around in Class G.
That's right.
What for? Why do I need to, have this onerous legislation and tracking ability in that airspace? And you're going to pay, if it happens, you're going to have to pay for it like we are. We're going to all pay for it.
I think just my personal opinion, I think part of this driving force isn't just UTM, but it's also the Amazons, the UPSs, the companies that want that 400 feet and below airspace to do commercial big commercial operations. And they don't want us to even have a chance at getting in the way of that. Yeah. And I truly believe that's a part of it. You know, it may not be the whole part, but I guarantee it's got to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
I agree with you on that 100%. And what do you think the answer is that's going to allow the Amazons and what have you to do their stuff and to allow us to do our stuff and be safe?
Well, I think part of it come back to what I stated about Lance. I think the Lance system is what gave that its legs, where if we're going to fly, say, in the park nearby, well, we designate, well, we're going to fly in the park, we're going to be below 150 feet, we're going to be at the edges of the park, and that's it. Well, once you upload that to the system, well, then the Amazon deliveries, the UPS deliveries, and so on, their systems see that and can direct around it without any issues. So there's no reason to have to do what they're doing with remote ID.
One of the solutions, Greg, I agree, one of the solutions, Greg, you can use is a 3D. This is a 3D airspace system. So if you are going to have recreational users use 400 feet and below, which is constitutionally available, then commingling delivery aircraft and drones doing medical work, all that sort of thing, could probably be allocated a higher airspace, up to 800 feet. And so you have a band there where they're giving their remote ID out. They're operating as commingling, as a Lance system in place. And the commercial world, the 107 operators and the other operators are commingling at a different level. But it's going to impact, if they're going to fly down in recreational airspace, Class G airspace, it's going to impact recreational users for sure.
Yeah. See, the big problem with going above 400 feet is that at 500 feet, that is the level out here in the U.S. that manned aviation is allocated. So you have helicopters that fly regularly. At least in our area, we have, the medevac helicopters going into the hospital, and they're regularly 500 feet, 600 feet, 700 feet. And that by itself can be an issue for the UPSs, the Amazons, especially in not so good weather conditions.
Right now, I can just hear Gary Mortimer saying his famous line, what is it again?
Oh, I don't remember that one. Gary Mortimer? Oh, my goodness.
no GA below 2K or something like that?
Oh, wow. I've never even heard that one, Greg.
Well, I don't think it's going to be that extreme. I would imagine that the transition would be, Doc, that when you're talking about medical helicopters flying at 800 feet, what height are the medical drones going to operate at?
Very true.
Doing the same job.
Same job.
That's a difference. So we automatically give a medical helicopter a priority and understand the priority. But, these unmanned aircraft are going to do this job. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there's certain aspects of it that the unmanned aircraft are going to be more capable than even the manned aircraft.
And so
we're going to places.
That's right. We're going to demand, though, that medical drones and service drones that are doing that are in their own airspace, outside of recreational airspace, for their own safety and for the result that they get a good delivery.
That's correct.
Who knows? We don't know yet. It's new territory.
In the end, we'll know sometime around September 2023 what's going to happen in the end.
So
tell me
question
what's happening there.
For both of you, just before we get onto that, question for both of you, as general aviation pilots trying to solve this problem, would you support stealing some of the existing GA airspace and saying, hey, look, general aviation, don't use it unless it's an emergent situation or whatever, something like that?
Well, That's
a good question.
Go ahead first, Doc. I've got my thoughts on that, but you go ahead.
Well, I think out here, at least where I'm at in southern New Mexico, okay, I live in the high desert. Where I live at 6,000 foot elevation. So we've got a lot of high altitude stuff in our area. If they were to say 500 to 600 feet, be aware, the same way they do the MOAs, the military operating areas, where military operations can be occurring in this location at these times. Just be aware. I think that would be more than ample for any of the commercial operations for drones. Give them a 100-foot sliver and say, in that 100-foot sliver, there is the possibility of that. And then for the commercial operations, and when I say commercial, I'm talking the Amazons, UPS, and stuff like that, they actually should have ADS-B on them. So that way manned aviation can know exactly where they're at in those areas. That way, if they're near an airport or near an approach or a departure or a Victor Airway or something that's used by manned aviation, they can know that, yes, there's a medical drone down in that area, or a delivery drone in that area, but it's going to be between this altitude and this altitude, and they know it'll be there. And I think that would work.
John?
I think it would too. I think also there needs to be some allowance for the weather. You'll notice flying manned aircraft, if the cloud base is low, and you're much likely to see light aircraft flying lower under the base, flying VFR. And so whenever the cloud base is below 1,000, that's for all of us, we should be aware that manned aircraft will use that. On a really nice day, a VFR aircraft is more likely to fly at 1,000 feet. I mean, just it's a general statement. A general
rule of thumb is 1,000 foot above AGL. Yep.
You know, because you can see further. As a VFR pilot, and an IFR pilot won't be lower than 1,000 feet because of obstacle clearance. But of course, VFR pilot, once you're at 1,000, you can see a lot further. You can navigate much easier. You can select more forced landing places. 1,000 feet's a comfortable altitude to be at, but you will go lower if the cloud base pushes you down. So I think we need to have those kind of mechanisms in place as well, and understanding. And where we've got in our risk assessments here, when you're flying beyond visual line of sight under our 107 type arrangement, if the cloud base is below 1,500 feet, we say you have to have more than 8 kilometres flight visibility under the cloud to operate safely in those environments. Expand your visibility so that you can see aircraft a little further if they're down working around in your area. So there's ways to do it. I mean, we're still gathering experience. You know, we're watching the technology evolve. The aircraft are becoming more capable. We're getting AirSense, we're getting ADS-B, we're getting all these other things as well, and we're going to have this system. I think naturally, and this is kind of going to create and ruffle some feathers and ideas, I think we've got to experiment with remote ID a little bit. I think we have to see what it can offer. Look, if it doesn't offer much and it's too expensive, I'm sure we'll vote it out. You know, we'll get rid of it. But
I agree with that.
If it provides some freedom, and if it provides us with a mechanism to be able to fly more freely, and you know, because like your car, my car is registered and I can drive it anywhere. I've got a driver's license that's international. I can drive anywhere in the world. I have to have those certificates and I have to have that information if I want the freedom to use or exercise that privilege. So let's mess with it. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't work, it'll go. It'll go. There's no doubt.
Well, can I just challenge 1 second on this? The whole remote ID thing. A minute ago, you were both saying against it. I hope I'm paraphrasing correctly. But if you have a look at ADS-B out, and for a minute pretend that's the next version of remote ID for commercial and delivery drones and all of those kind of things. But just imagine it's tweaked to make it secure so that you can't spoof it, and it's not containing any other private data other than the registration. Would both of you then support that as a mandatory thing, let's say in this imaginary 400 to 500 or 600 feet or whatever it's going to be?
If you were going to have that, sorry, go ahead, Doc.
Well, it'd have to be specific to a type of aircraft, because when you think about it, you know, like this one here, you're not going to fit ADS-B in this. You're just not. The transponder components are too big.
I'm not talking about a type. I'm talking about a function. So something where it's for a particular purpose, and I'm not talking about recreational use. I'm talking about delivery and commercial services at a particular altitude.
Yeah, because now you're talking a much larger aircraft, you know, that's capable of handling the equipment, you know, that's going to be required to make ADS-B outwork. I don't see a problem with it with that type of commercial equipment in commercial delivery. Where it becomes a problem is that here in the States, the FAA does not draw a distinction between the Amazons and a Part 107 pilot flying for money. They are the same as far as that goes. The only difference is what part the aircraft has to be held to, such as Part 135 and all the other ones for those type of commercial carrying operations. Save that, they still have to be a commercial pilot of some sort. And that's the distinction. That goes either non-commercial or commercial pilot. So unless FAA decides to make a separate distinction, to say that type of commercial operation is different than flying for hire, doing aerial photography essentially, then that would be a problem for those doing aerial photography because they wouldn't be able to comply.
One of the problems with that too, Doc, is that the regulations don't allow that distinction at the moment.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
So the FAA is bundling everyone together purely under a legislative instruction. And so we have that same problem here as well. Yeah. And so we're waiting for evolution in registration, regulation, if you like, as well. And I think it'll just take its course. This is what's going to happen. It'll take its course.
In the meantime, I think what's going to happen if the other things that are in the works right now do not do anything to change this, I see, like I was saying before, the haves and the have-nots. You're going to have the guys that are going to have to comply to be able to do what they do commercially. Then you're going to have the pirates, the FPV guys in particular, and people that buy camera drones that are secondhand, not brand new, because all the brand new stuff will be complied, because it has to due to the regulation. But all the older stuff is going to be available to purchase secondhand, and they're going to go out and go fly it anyhow without it. So, and that's something that I see potentially happening.
I see that as a big problem because, people who do have their equipment in Australia, when we had the big change in legislation for things that go bang, and I won't say it because I don't want YouTube to be nasty, but we got rid of them and there was a buyback where the government bought back all of those things that go bang. Do we have a buyback for all of the old aircraft that people already owned? I mean, I
don't believe so. That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah,
because a lot of what we have is handmade. I mean, a lot of my stuff it's one-off.
You're 3D printing it. You're putting something together, like you can something that goes bang. Of course. I got another one, Doc, just to throw at you, which is interesting because I know you're an RC pilot, and I love flying RC. I'm a member of the club, and I love that whole social environment. Do you sense the model aircraft fraternity is really quite nervous at the moment, worried about what they're going to be showered with in a regulation sense from where unmanned vehicles are going?
Here in the States, no. I do not get that sense because most of the major sites where you can fly fixed-wing aircraft and helicopter are AMA sites. And as far as what I've heard through the grapevine, that there's scuttlebutt, the AMA is trying to petition FAA to file a single petition for FRIA, which is the free sites where you don't have to have remote ID, and filing a single petition and then granting it to all AMA sites as a single grant. Now that's just, hearsay and, scuttlebutt that I've heard, but I could see that happening with AMA. And then all the different AMA clubs don't have to worry about anything as long as they stay in good standing with the AMA.
That's right.
And
we have the
MAAA.
We have the MAAA here, and they're doing exactly the same thing. So they're petitioning. You can go and fly pretty much anything at your local flying site. You're covered. And so recreational quadcopter flying, FPV, because it's normally, you can fly FPV at a club, really contains. So I think the regulators look at the idea of us flying at model flying sites is a level of containment that they would like to see. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just a good idea, but I like the fact that it's going to keep RC flying progressing. It's evolving as well, and we're flying at certain sites, and so be it.
Well, here in the
Go on.
States, the AMA has gotten a bit of a bad rap for really not stepping up to the plate when all this started for RC as a whole. They basically just looked at their side of it, the fixed wing and the helicopters at their sites, and didn't really give, the rotary wing, the multi-rotor side much thought at all. And they've kind of paid for it, I don't want to say from a personal standpoint, but from a PR standpoint. And to this day, you can't really go to most flying sites and fly a multi-rotor aircraft with FPV. They just don't allow it. And the reason why is because all these sites, even though they are AMA fields, they are privately owned and operated, which means they have the final say. And that's where the problem lies.
Politics.
Yeah, I wonder what the figures are. I mean, a lot of people come from RC into flying quads and FPV. I wonder how many people sort of bought their first quad, started flying, and thought, "Hey, I'm going to buy an RC aircraft and see how I go with that." I wonder how engaging that is for people. We could probably ask our audience if they got into RC through quad. I can't imagine it would be a huge amount, but it'd be interesting to know.
I think it's less than the other way around.
Sure.
I think it's quite a bit less.
Yep.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm just seeing Lloyd starting to doze off in the background. So let's do something else.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to play Stop the Yank.
This ought to be fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
why did it do that twice?
it's time to
Why
play.
cast? Why cast? I don't know. It's a shot in Wirecast. It's got 2 files. Play number 1, then number 2 on loop. Why do you play number 1 twice? I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to play Stump the Yank. We're going to have our 3 people on screen. We're going to have Mr. Lloyd on the right, our guest in the middle, and John on the other side.
Fun.
The rose between the thorns, maybe? I don't know. But Lloyd and I actually had a chat. The cactus? Lloyd and I had a chat about a word earlier today, and this is a tricky one because there are 2 meanings that are valid, but he's going to give 4 meanings for this word, and you've got to pick which 2 are correct. Okay,
oh boy.
Lloyd,
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah. Now, this is in reference to Aussie slang, not American slang. So,
right.
All right. What is the origins of, or what is a corker, or what is actually more, what is the origins of the term corker?
Okay.
Is it, and you gotta give me 2 of them. 2 out of the 4 are right.
All right.
Is it somebody who sticks the cork in Australian wine bottles? Is it a cricket itch that is so good it can't be hit? Is it a...
You're using the word pitch.
Bowl? Yeah, it's because he's a Yank. He wouldn't know what bowling is other than throwing a ball like in a big alley, 10 pin. Okay, so you just mind your own business, Greg.
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. I don't understand a pitch other than it's the ground.
No, a pitch is, well, a pitch is that we're getting off the topic. Just shut up. Screwing me up here. Okay, so is it a bowl that is too hard to hit, or a pitch that is too hard to hit, or now there's 4 of them and you got to get 2 of them, or let's do the first one. Okay, the second one, or is it somebody who puts the lining inside of old ships, seals it, okay, or is it something that usually happens right after you've been constipated about 3 days?
Well, I would go with 2 and 4. How's that?
Well, you would be correct for one of them. You got one of
You
the
would be
twos.
correct for one of them.
Yeah. So
Now, which one of those two is correct? Yeah, actually, a corker is a throw.
Yep.
Are you okay, Greg? Is
A
that
pitch.
okay? A throw, pitch, a bowl.
in
That
cricket.
is so, in cricket, okay, which is
right.
actually so perfect that it's it's almost
It's
impossible.
fast.
to hit.
It's a fast
It's
ball.
like
Okay.
Also,
It's like trying to
It's
hit a knuckleball.
yeah, it's also the term of somebody who put in between the wood planks. They put cork
Yep.
in the old wood ships, and they were called corkers. It's also where the term corker, where saying that woman, she's a real corker. It's because those women that were constantly putting the cork into those slats of wood started building up a certain type of physique.
Yep.
And I'll let you go from there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great information, Lloyd. I learn something every week. Hey,
There you go. I got a 50-50 on that one. That was pretty good.
here's one for you,
But
Doc.
actually, American slang, the fourth one was correct.
That's
American
correct.
slang.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right. American slang. Hey, I got one for you, Doc. So I know,
All right.
I know you're a musician, and
Yes.
you can play all of the wind instruments.
Yes.
Now, going back to pitch again. Thank you, Lloyd.
I knew that was coming.
That was a little bit of a flat C.
Yeah, it was flat. Well, a cricket pitch is, just so you know, a cricket pitch is 22 yards. So
Okay.
what's the definition of perfect pitch?
Ooh. Boy, I haven't even heard that in a while.
Perfect pitch.
Perfect pitch. Usually when I think of perfect pitch is when you have 4-part harmonies that are exactly on pitch and you
Right.
cannot hear the 4 different voices individually. It becomes
Absolutely
a
not.
single voice.
No, the definition of perfect pitch is being able to throw a banjo into a toilet from 22 yards.
There you go.
That's perfect pitch.
That's perfect pitch, yes. I'll give you that.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you know what makes for extra points, though?
What's that?
Is if you can get the pick in that same pitch.
Yeah, that's right.
And if
You
you,
know
want
how
to
to
get
tune
extra
a banjo,
points again, if you want to get extra points again, you get the banjo player in there with it.
The best way to tune a banjo is with wire cutters.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or a hammer.
burn it.
They were hammered, yeah.
Yeah.
You know the difference
I'm all for a hammer.
The difference between a banjo and a trampoline is that you're supposed to take your shoes off before you jump on a trampoline.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Look, we've been having a lot of fun there. We've had fun having you on, Doc. Let me just get myself on screen and we'll kill
There
that
you are.
music. There we are. So I'd love you to stick around if you've got some time in the background. We've got 5 more
Absolutely.
stories. If there's anything that you think you want to chime in with, feel free to do so. But thanks for being our guest, and have a chat
bet,
in the
Greg.
chat room with the guys as well. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. Uh-oh.
Okay.
We got guys in the chat.
Oh, no. Okay, let's get Johnny back, and we're going to go with our next story, which would be this one. Atlanta police used a drone to track down a missing 84-year-old. Check this out. It's coming.
APD tells me as a last-ditch effort, they decided to fly a drone over the elderly man's home, searching a 4-mile wooded area. Today, they're releasing that video for the first time and showing the moments he was finally found. APD says they spotted 84-year-old Fred Samuels about a mile from his home on May 26 using their drone camera. At that point, canine and helicopter units had been searching miles of land for him for close to 36 hours.
So normally, if we don't find them within that 24-hour period, it's kind of down. It goes down here from there.
Because Samuels suffers from dementia, police sent in his family first to make contact with the 84-year-old after tracking him down. In the video, you can see a son and grandson finally reuniting with their loved one. APD says the temperature was above 90 degrees that day, and Samuels, it appears, had been sitting by a creek for hours. They say he was transported to a local hospital for minor injuries, but is now doing okay.
So yeah, interesting that they had a helicopter going and searching for a couple of days before they got the drone in at the last bit, and they found him. Good use of drone technology.
Absolutely, and of course the best thing is you can use it at night. The helicopter, it can search at night, but it's nowhere near as effective in getting down amongst the trees as an unmanned aerial vehicle is. That's for sure. Good
and
work.
John, you do realise, John, that the drone, when it came to find him, it had a smiley face on it.
I realised that. He would have seen it as a smiley face. Or actually, the poor guy, when he first saw the drone, might not have, in his condition, might have been quite worried about it. But anyway, a good story with a good ending.
Yeah, okay. Let's move on to our next story. And this one is... okay, I'm just going to read it. Using drones to measure environmental data is common practice, but what about odor sensors? This drone is being used to measure. This drone is being used to measure the impact of odor from water treatment plants. Now, we did have some audio in the original one, but I didn't have rights to the music, so I had to kill.
There's Lloyd's going to do the audio for us. I can tell. He's been waiting for it. He's been waiting for this story.
But just read along. Sorry we don't have the narration, but just read along with the text that's down below there explaining what they're doing.
Surprisingly, Greg, I know what all of those components on the ground are.
I don't want to know how you know that, Doc.
I work for the city in the water and sewer department.
Oh, okay.
At the waste treatment plant. So you've got clarifiers and all those different components that do all of that.
You're right.
That job stinks to me, though.
It does. It still stinks. It doesn't matter what they do.
You need a new act, Lloyd.
As long as Lloyd just wipes, we're okay.
Okay, moving right along. One public school in Northampton is using drones to bring programming to the real world for their students. Let's have a look.
You can launch the same spot every time. We're the only ones that haven't made it.
So this was apparently the last group to go, and they were the only ones who hadn't done it so far. The object was to, through programming, not through hand flying, to have the drone go and navigate through these gates. So this is all computer programming. I believe it's a tello. And you notice at the very beginning they said you've got to make sure it's perfectly lined up for its launch so that it had the correct orientation. And there we go.
How about that?
You know, when I see stuff like this, Greg, and I think about what we've been talking about this whole show, registration, and, you know, the legalities of what we're doing, this generation is going to sort it out. This generation will fix it. If they grab hold of it now at that age and can do that kind of programming, they won't see the barriers that we see. They just don't have them in front of them. You know, they're a different breed, if you like. And I think that right from the ground up, we're going to be building not new drones, but new engineers and new pilots that are going to solve all of the problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of new ideas always, and speaking of which, an idea to run up the flagpole is this one. Flightbase is partnering with OmniFlow to build a drone charging hub atop poles with the goal of creating a network and highway for drone service providers. Again, we did have music on the original and some narration, which I had to pull out, but it's an interesting concept, the charging pod, absolutely. But then the addition of saying we're going to build a network, which could be a Wi-Fi network or whatever type of technology to go and enable these for whether it be delivery or whatever type of automation in the future. That could be interesting. Just imagine every telegraph pole It's already got power source there. You go and put these things on the top of your telegraph poles on the side of the road. John,
wouldn't
Doc?
Wouldn't work so well in our area.
Yeah, I applaud the idea refueling drones on the way, but if you are betting against that technology and you are betting against the battery industry providing the other solution of having lots of fuel to go anywhere you like, which one would you bet on?
Yeah, it depends how far you need to go at the end of the day.
Hydrogen fuel.
True.
Keep watching that space. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And chemical batteries too. We haven't seen the beginning of that yet. And so I still think it's a great idea to have these landing areas and stuff, of course. But I don't know whether I'd be getting shares in it right away.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's move on to our next one. We've got a couple of quick ones left. Scientists have developed special drones that can fire an electric charge into clouds to make the clouds rain, potentially paving the way for downpours. The drones beam electricity into the cloud using the charge to expand water droplets, causing the clouds to bond together and fall as rain.
I'm Kerry Nichol from the University of Reading, and we have a project which is funded by the UAE Rain Enhancement Programme, and the idea behind that is to study the effect of charge on cloud droplets. This project has been brilliant in terms of actually physically enabling us to develop new technology to actually get into clouds and to release charge and to study it firsthand rather than to just model it. What we're doing here is something that's completely different. We're using unmanned aircraft, which means that things are actually much more cost effective. We're simply charging up what's already there.
So the aircraft is currently flying in small circles around our surface electric fuel mill. So as it flies around, it's emitting charge into the air that we are detecting on the surface with an electric fuel mill at the ground.
Systems battery on. There's a lot of time and effort is put into actually making the aircraft in the first place. All the meteorological sensors that you see on the aircraft, we've actually designed ourselves, and we've made them because you can't buy them off the shelf.
So this was a UAE-based project and design, but certainly Australia being a land of droughts and flooding rains, I found this one interesting.
The particles that are emitted from the manned aircraft.
Well, you know, Greg,
this might actually make them more efficient at producing rain.
Cloud seeding is not new by any stretch of the imagination. It's very, it's been around for a while. So, my other meteorological friends will tell you about what we call condensation nuclei. So when you have super saturated water in the atmosphere, the temperature changes, the water becomes visible, creates cloud, doesn't necessarily create rain, but of course you supersize the droplets and all of this stuff. So what they're doing is they're putting essentially a condensation nuclei, something for the water droplets to adhere to so that they can grow in size. Once they've got a seeding particle, if you like, they're able to grow to the point where they can't hold up against gravity. So, as it said, that has been around for a long time. Great idea to use drones to seed the clouds. I do wonder what they're using as the...
Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you, Lloyd. I do wonder what they're using for the condensation nuclei.
But what I was understanding from the story is that they're adding electrical charge. They're not actually adding new nuclei.
Yeah,
that's
it sounded
what
like
I
they
heard
were
from.
ionizing it.
Yeah.
Ionizing it. Yeah, okay. That kind of has got possibilities, hasn't it? That's a new idea for sure.
Yeah.
Do it on a large scale. It's a hard one. Big one on a large scale.
Yeah. So that was our almost last story. I've got one that was as a backup, but I thought let's do it anyway. This one's Disneyland by drone. During these times of COVID, people have been able to fly in places that they couldn't before. Disneyland Paris has released a relaxing new video that lets you experience the resort as you've never seen it before. Let's have a look. How would you love to have been the one to do this flight, John? A day of playing.
Well, yeah, they closed Disneyland and you can fly around and have a great time. Yes, for sure. I really liked Disneyland. I thought it was fun. I went there. I went to both of them.
Did you go to the one in California, John?
I went to California and then I went to the one in Florida. Yeah, I loved them both. I thought they were great. Really fun. Oh, and I took my young son with me. So, you know, you got to go with a kid, of course. That makes it all the more interesting and for, you know, see it through their eyes.
And an excuse to have an old man wandering around Disneyland.
Absolutely. Actually, you know, where I was my Disneyland was the Smithsonian. I thought that was the best Disneyland I'd ever been to. That's for sure. It was amazing.
Aren't you on display there somewhere?
Yeah, I'm my statue's next to yours under the old farts.
Okay, enough. Don't give him any ammunition.
Well, I got a little tidbit. The one in Anaheim, I actually did quite a bit of work out there as an adult, building some of those parks, the new parks they added on. So I've seen it in a different light.
Yeah, the good and the bad. No, I thought it was amazing.
Yep. But I grew up down in that area. I grew up about 20 minutes from Anaheim. So we spent quite a bit of time down there when we were younger.
Okay, let's leave that one there and we'll come back to the studio. If you do want to watch more of these, go and check out the description for the video. We've got links to all of the original sources. We've only included small bits of all of these things. Go and check out the originals so you can support those creators all the time. That's really cool. But right now, let's go and say goodbye and farewell. We'll start with Doc first of all. It was really good to have you on.
Appreciate you having me on, Greg.
Any last words from you?
My main last word is the same last words that I had with Lloyd. It's, if you get a chance to go fly with others, go fly. Even if you got to drive 2, 3, 5, 10 hours, go do it. There is nothing like being able to get with a group of like-minded flyers and have a good time together.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a plan.
Second that.
Lloyd, last words for you for the day?
Well, you know, I can blame this guy now because Monday I will have a 5-inch Rotor Riot CO1 frame coming. Well, actually, I got the whole thing. It's already built. Being sent to me by them and tuned and ready to go. So I will be replacing batteries, props, and all that crap and spending more money. And so when Judy kills me, it's all Doc's fault.
That's right.
So,
absolutely.
But I'm going to say what I always say: be kind, treat each other better than you treat yourselves. Remember, everybody matters, even old guys like that.
Yeah, you guys ask me.
And hey, take care.
Okay, Johnny, last words from you for the day.
Yeah, thanks, Lloyd. Look, I'd love to restate Doc's sentiment there. Flying, you know, is a social thing for us to do as well. You learn so much. Hanging around, hangar talk, if you like, sharing stories with each other is the way that we actually get better at what we do. You can learn it from experience. You can learn it from the experience of others. And that's an important one to remember. So, yeah, go out and share the thing that we do, that we love doing.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, look, as we finish today, the couple of community service announcements. If you want to send a video to us, send it to upload@gregkuhnert.com. We haven't had many for a while, so send me something. I feel a bit lonely.
I used to love that segment that we used to show towards the end of the show. We'd show some of the
Explore
great
Australia.
Yeah, Australia.
I've got Greg Hilton had some stuff happening that prevented him from continuing to produce that. But believe it or not, I just turned that off the screen and it's still there. So let me try it. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go away. Follow us on social media. But lastly, if you want to send anything physical, 5/127 Princess Highway, Sylvania, New South Wales, 22224 Australia. Gents, it's been fun.
Excellent.
Thank you to our viewers for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Have
See
a
you
good
next
one.
week.
Bye-bye for now.
Big flying next week, everybody.
Have a
Don't
good one,
forget.
guys.
Tune in.
Do me a favor. Join our Discord today if you want to try and do a test so that you can make sure your drone's going to work next week. Okay.
Yep.
See you next time. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Night.